Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Danny Taylor. I am the co-owner of veganproteins.com, which is an online coaching company that works exclusively with vegans. Now, if you are new here, hi, thanks for joining us. Today, I'm gonna be talking about some of the missteps that I made particularly early in my fitness journey. So if you haven't seen my vegan story, how I went vegan, why I went vegan, I would definitely recommend checking that out just because it's important to the points in this story. But I'll give you the very condensed version of it. I grew up overweight. By the time I was 16 years old, I was 210 pounds. I went vegan for ethical reasons specifically, and after I went vegan, weight started coming off of me. I decided to make a life change because of it, etc., etc. I ended up losing 90 pounds. That is not everybody's vegan journey, but that is what happened for me. But once I reached my goal weight, which at that point I believe was 130 pounds, I should preface this by saying I am currently 34 years old and I'm 5'7". So when I went vegan, I was 17 years old. And I would say that I hit my goal weight by the time I was like 18 or maybe 19. So when I hit my goal weight of 130 pounds, I wasn't thrilled with the way that it looked. It didn't look the way I thought it was gonna look in my mind. And that is one of the many, many things that no one tells you about massive weight loss, which I have a whole video about things no one tells you about massive weight loss. That is one of them. And I realized that I thought that me, 5'7" at 130 pounds, would look like oxygen cover model that's 5'7" and 130 pounds. And no, that's not actually how it works. So I decided that I needed to get into the gym and learn how to lift. So I did. I had already been going to the gym and doing cardio this whole time. So I essentially lost the weight that I lost via diet and cardio exclusively, but I wasn't happy with the shape of my body, basically. So I hired a personal trainer at the gym who was fantastic, amazing person. She taught me how to lift. She taught me how to lift pretty heavy too. There were some things that she left out that in hindsight I think were really, really important, and I wish that I had learned them much sooner than I did, particularly how to use a barbell, really, how to barbell squat, overhead press, how to deadlift. You know, now looking back, I'm like, wow, those should really be pretty early on in someone's fitness journey. But I think because it was kind of a corporate gym, she wanted to keep the exercises as safe as possible. And especially where I was quite young, 18 years old, she just wanted to keep me safe. But all of the movements that she did teach me were really, really great. And she taught me how to bring some intensity to those movements. And I think that's important. There were no little pink dumbbells. She had me lat pulling down, 80 pounds for sets of 15, which at the time was a lot. And I felt powerful for the first time in a long, long time, possibly ever in my life at that point. But when it came to my diet, I felt like I had just kept hitting this plateau. Of course, at this point, I didn't understand what my goals should have been. And this is so important to why I had so many missteps for so long, is because I just didn't understand what my goals should have been. So I felt like I was hitting these massive plateaus, and I was, so I assumed it had to be my diet. Because I was in the gym 5 days a week, working hard with this trainer. It cost me like all of my money at 18 years old, I'm sure you can imagine. But when it came to my diet, because I was vegan, she didn't know how to help me. She had given me these kind of printouts of, diets for women, which in hindsight is kind of funny. But they were all like chicken breast, egg white, cottage cheese, whey protein, that sort of thing. And I was not going to eat that. And again, keep in mind, this was probably 2003 at this point. There were not a lot of vegan protein powders, let alone all of the other awesome vegan things that are out there now. Back then it was like you bought soy protein isolate and Boca burgers and tofu. Like, end of protein list. And of course, no one knew what to do with tofu back then. I certainly freaking didn't. So she was really stuck with my diet, and basically she told me, this may be as far as you go. And I don't hold this against her to this day. She didn't know, and we're still in touch to this day. And when she does have a vegan client now, or even a vegetarian client, a lot of times she'll send them my way just to talk about nutrition stuff, because she saw over the next, 20 years that I did figure it out. But at that time I had no idea what I was doing. So I went to a Veg Fest in 2005, 2006. I'm really not sure exactly what year it was, but Robert Cheek was there and he was giving a talk about vegan bodybuilding. I had never heard of Robert Cheek. I was not going there specifically to see this. He just happened to be there. I happened to be there for the time of the talk. The stars aligned and I went to the talk and I said, oh my God, there are other people trying to do what I'm trying to do. And he had a website that was a forum and I joined that forum, which incidentally is where I met Giacomo. All of us met in person a couple years later. It was awesome. You guys see how that story ended. Once I got onto his forum, I kind of sorted through all the information that was there, and some of it was really, really good, but it still wasn't custom to me, and I wanted to know what I should do. And I eventually found a vegan registered dietitian who coached people online. Now in 2006, this was like unheard of in 2006. I know now there's like a bajillion online coaches, but back then I had never even heard of one before, and I know there weren't many. And I figured she's vegan, she's a registered dietitian, which I knew was like a big deal, and she looked fantastic. Ding, 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 I was thrilled. So I signed up with her to do online coaching, and the training program was really nothing to write home about, but it was good, it was not bad. And the diet was a meal plan, which at the time made perfect sense to me. I wanna look like you. Give me the meal plan that makes me look like you. At the time, that seemed to be exactly what made sense. So looking back, I want to say that the meal plan was around 1,700 calories, which is not insanely low. It's also not high, not for an 18-year-old girl at all. It's not high. I mean, it's low, but I wanted to lean out. What did I want to lean out to? Now I couldn't tell you. I was 130 pounds, but I just knew I didn't look like the people I wanted to look like, and the difference that I could see was, well, they're leaner than I am, so I just need to get leaner. I was missing this absolutely critical step of building muscle and knowing how to do that and knowing what that meant. And in hindsight, it was the biggest blunder that I made, and I made it for years, and I'll tell you how. So I followed this meal plan and I did get leaner. I probably got to like 125 pounds or something, and I did look leaner, right? But it still wasn't what I thought was gonna happen. You know, it was the same food every day for months, the same 5 meals every day for months. And I also, it's important to add, I was a bartender at the time. But Danny, you were 18. Yeah, I know. Boy, was my boss shocked the day I turned 21. I never lied about my age, but I guess they just didn't know that I was 18. So because I was a bartender, I mean, I was on my feet all day. There were no Fitbits back then, but I assume that if I was wearing one, I probably walked anywhere between 20 and 30,000 steps a day, excluding the gym. I also didn't have a car. I walked everywhere. I mean, I was a very, very active person at this point in my life, eating 1,700 calories a day, the same food every day. And I remember saying, can we change this up a little bit? Because it's really hard to eat the exact same thing every single day. And the response that I got was along the lines of like, well, you can swap this tofu for a Boca burger, or you could swap this fruit for that fruit, but really no. And I was also told that I was lucky to be able to be eating the variety of foods that I was eating, because that coach could, and I quote, never get away with eating those things. So what were those things? Boca burgers, Cliff Builder bars, definitely things that were not on my everyday meal plan. But you know, in hindsight, looking back, I was getting the macronutrients that she wanted me to be getting. And this is when I started flexible dieting. I had never heard of it. I had never heard of If It Fits Your Macros. It's interesting because over on bodybuilding.com, which was not vegan, so I never visited it. In hindsight, again, another mistake, but I never visited. People over there were starting to do the same thing, starting to just build their nutrition plan based on macronutrients so that they could have some variety. And I was doing the same thing over in my own little corner of veganism. And I was hitting macronutrients that were in my original meal plan, just hitting them with foods that I liked more, but still it just wasn't enough food for me. It had been maybe a year and a half. I was still eating 1,700 calories a day. And I remember saying to my coach, like, well, what happens now? Like, am I just supposed to, Am I supposed to eat like this forever? Is this what happens? And remember, I'm 18 or 19 years old, maybe 20 at this point, and I'm asking this woman who's twice my age, who also is accredited in these questions. I feel like I'm doing the right things, not just, getting some advice from some hack on the internet, right? But, essentially the answer was yes, you have to eat like this forever. And that kind of deflated me because I didn't want to do that. So I started incorporating like one day a week where I would have like a cheat day. And you guys probably see where this is going. That cheat day turned into an all-out binge. It turned into an all-out binge almost every single weekend, and then come Monday morning, I felt terrible about myself. And then it started happening during the week. I'd come home from the gym and I'd go to have my protein shake with 1 scoop of protein and 1/2 a banana and 1 teaspoon of peanut butter. And then I would, the spoon would find its way back into the peanut butter, and I would be eating more peanut butter and more peanut butter. I was so freaked out because I had had so much discipline for so long, like 2 years at this point, and suddenly it was like I couldn't keep it together. And I remember reaching out to this particular coach, and she said to me, that happens sometimes, and when it happens to me, I just have a rum and Diet Coke and take a sleeping pill. And at that point, a red flag was raised in my mind. Like, that's a really bizarre thing for a fitness person to say, especially to an underage kid, basically. But that was the first time that I was like, maybe this is off. Maybe this isn't right. Maybe I need to take some of this back into my own hands. So I did. But at this point, those binges were happening almost weekly. Like, you could almost set your watch to them. And meanwhile, I was researching, better ways to be vegan. And this, of course, led me to like soy-free, gluten-free, oil-free, sugar-free, raw. I was convinced that it was the foods that I was eating that were making me binge, not the fact that I just wasn't eating enough. And this eventually turned into a full-blown eating disorder. It literally felt like a downward spiral until I had to just take a step back from fitness entirely, completely. I had a lot of really unhealthy influences in my life. The sort of purist vegans that denounce cooked broccoli as being toxic over raw broccoli. Like, shit that just is absolutely insane right now, but at the time I was so vulnerable to basically bullshit ideas that I became a sort of victim to those ideas. It led me down a really, really dark path. And it wasn't until I fully stepped away from fitness. I didn't train for like a year. I ate whatever I wanted for like a year. And it's worth noting that I did get back up to 155 pounds at one point, which is 15 pounds heavier than I am now. I now know that my like sweet spot where my body is happy is like 140 pounds. 130 is just too light for me to be walking around. 155 was very uncomfortable for me. The point was, the pendulum swung way back the other way. But in the meantime, while I stepped away, I still observed. I observed the bodybuilding community and the vegan bodybuilding community from a distance for probably a year, maybe 2 years. And I would watch some of the things that were happening in the larger community. Bear in mind, the community was so much smaller than it is now. There wasn't a single vegan bodybuilder on the planet that I wasn't aware of back in 2008. That's not true now. They're popping up every day, which is amazing, but it was a smaller community. And I watched, and there were a lot of things that were being done that just didn't make sense to me. And there were a lot of people having very similar experiences to what I had had. And that is when I started really researching into the science, stepping away from the vegan community entirely and learning from the larger bodybuilding community as a whole, and finding the people in that community that seemed to have their shit together and seemed to be understanding the science of things. And that's when I started kind of plucking the things that made sense from over here and talking to the vegan community about it. Water cutting is a great example. Before a bodybuilding show, everybody was still cutting water. before a bodybuilding show, sometimes for days, including Giacomo. And we kind of talked about this on our funny podcast about all the things we did wrong when we were younger. But I remember saying, this doesn't make sense. There's got to be a better way. And learning how like the science evidence-based community, which again was also teeny tiny at that time, was doing things and kind of carrying it over. And I'm going on a tangent here, but why did all of this happen? Why did it happen? It was because I didn't understand at that point that my goal should not have been to get leaner. The goal should have been to build muscle. And the only way that you can do that is by eating at least at maintenance, preferably in a surplus. I was so young and so active and had been dieting for so long, particularly as a previously obese kid. And somebody should have said, hey, you've done such a great job up to this point. Let's get your calories up. Let's get you lifting heavier. This is where the real body transformation is gonna happen. You're never gonna look like so-and-so because so-and-so has way more muscle than you do. That's what I needed to hear at that time, but I didn't. Easily the biggest misstep of my entire fitness career was not taking the time to stop dieting and just build some muscle. And I still, if I could go back in time and change one thing about my entire fitness journey, that would be it. That would have been it right there. I think building muscle as a 19-year-old would have been a hell of a lot easier than the next real time that I tried to build muscle when I was fully, back into the bodybuilding scene with both feet. I would say I was probably maybe 24 years old, and several rounds of competing make building muscle harder and harder. And now at 34 years old, like, it's night and day. I could have built way more muscle at 19 years old than I can at 34 years old. So when I look around the larger fitness community or people interested in fitness, vegan folks interested in fitness, I see a lot of them are spending way too much time just trying to get leaner. And then they get there and they don't know where to go and they don't know what to do. And a lot of these food-focused things pop up, binge habits pop up. And if you're looking for permission to eat more, this is it. This isn't some, softball, just do what you want and live your life. I am a fitness professional. This is me saying that you are actually hurting your physique, your physical health, your mental health by trying to stay in a deficit for too long. If you got to your goal weight and you're not happy with what it looks like, the answer is not just get leaner. The answer is almost always, and especially for women, eat more and build muscle. This is not my entire fitness journey, but the rest of it I think is pretty standard. Like, I got smarter, I trained better, I went through building phases, and then I, started competing. When I started coaching was all the way back when I was learning, when I was watching. I actually started helping other people on their journeys before I even got back into it. I didn't call it coaching. I would see things, I would give my opinion because everything was forums back then. And eventually people just started asking me more and more for advice because it was working. It was helping them. And, after a couple years of that, I then had the confidence to get back into it myself. I felt safe enough from my previous eating disorder that I could get back into it myself. And all of this is the reason why coaching is so important to me. Looking back, when I trace a lot of really, really bad things that happened in my fitness journey, it goes back to a coach that was giving really dangerous advice, and me being young and vulnerable to taking that dangerous advice to heart. And it took years to undo that. And I still see this situation happen a lot. People walk through my door having gotten terrible advice. They're in an incredibly bad position where they no longer just need a coach, they also need a mental health professional. I'm not a mental health professional. And I just want to see other people miss those pitfalls that I fell smack into. I don't want to see other people do that. So that is why it's so important to me. More than anything else is because I experienced it firsthand when there wasn't as much information. And now we almost have the opposite problem, where there is so much information out there that you don't know what to listen to and what not to listen to. So if any of this resonated with you, take it for what you will. Think about it. Think about if you've been in that place, if you are in that place, and what you can do going forward. I hope this is helpful to somebody. If you guys have any other questions at all about this or nutrition or binge eating, I have a whole series on emotional eating. Let me know. I like making the content that you guys want to see. I like making the content that you guys want to learn about. And I just love hearing from you guys in general. So thanks so much for watching. I look forward to the next video, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye guys.